this would be enough to support all of the weight. So earlier monuments were built of mud brick, so he built this monument out of stones that were the size of mud brick. Now, confidence in the construction method, however, in just a few generations, led the next dynasty, the fourth dynasty builders, to enlarge the blocks under Khafre, Menkaure. And you see the incredible size of the complexes that they were building, and then these stones are absolutely huge. And if you climb up these, which they don't let you do, but I did when I was a lot younger, I wouldn't do it today, they come up to about mid-chest on me, so they're much larger than the size of bricks. Now, here is a Sphinx, and here is Khufu's son's pyramid, and here's Khufu's pyramid. This is the boat museum and I just showed you the boat just a minute ago. Now, one of the things that I don't know if you can see it from here, but Khufu's is in the foreground and Khafre's is in the background. Now, Khafre's is actually 470 feet high, and so it's 10 feet lower. Its position, however, is on a higher part of the plateau, so it makes it appear as if it is actually higher. Now, I don't know, it's not going to be visible in that one. No, I'm sorry. Trust me, in all of the others, it does look there. Which one looks the biggest? On the bottom one, it's the one in the middle, and that is Khafre. So it's probably on purpose that he did this. And it made a win-win situation. It may have been actually shorter for decorum, but then visibly taller for Khafre, the son's image. It would be ironic, however, if the term Great Pyramid, used in the original text in the 5th century BCE, referred to Khafre and not Khufu, and Khufu's was actually the taller of the two. Now, the Sphinx itself dominates the eastern part of the complex. And you can see here, you get the feeling of how huge it is. And any of you who've been there knows that if you stood, you'd be about this high. So how big is it? And I love getting these kinds of statistics. It's 240 feet long, just shy of the length of a football field. And it's almost 70 feet high, which is about the height of the White House. I'm sure these analogies are very helpful for you. But it is Egypt's largest statue, and it's still worthy of respect 1,000 years after its production, and then even more into today. Now, I show you these two images. On the left, I'll talk about this in just a minute. This is obviously the Sphinx in Egypt. On the right, it's also an image of the Sphinx. On the left, it dates to about 1400, so it's about 1,000 years after. And then on the right, this is a 19th century painting now in the Museum of Fine Arts. And you can see that the Holy Family was resting between the paws of the Sphinx. So obviously, this was an important message to get across. And then on the left, what I'm going to concentrate on is what's between the Sphinx, the paws of the actual Sphinx here. And this is a stele of a man who later became king. His name is Thutmose IV, and he is of the family that eventually produced King Tut. And that's him there. His name is Thutmose IV. But when he was still a prince, his name was Menkhepurura. And he was very athletic, and he loved to go out hunting. And one day, he was hunting in the deserts of Egypt, and it's very hot there. So around midday, he got tired, and he decided to rest in the paws of the Sphinx. Let me go back. And he fell asleep. He had a dream, and this is called the dream stele. And after this, after he had the dream, eventually he became king, and he decided to put this stele up to explain this miracle that happened to him. So he recorded what had actually occurred, and I'll quote to you what he actually wrote. One of these days it happened that he rested in the shade of the Sphinx at the time of midday in the shadow of the great god that is the Sphinx. And he found the majesty of this noble god speaking with his own mouth. And he said, "Look at me, see me, my son. Here is what I will do for you. I shall give you the kingship on earth in front of all living ones." Now, of course, you don't get anything for nothing. So he goes on, and he says, "Here is what I need you to do for me. My present condition is like one that is in need. All my limbs are dismembered as the sands of the desert upon which I lie have reached me. So run to me, to have done that which I desire." Now, as with all predictions that occur after the fact, that's what happened. So he was a prince who was not in line to be the king, and he did what he was told to do, and he became king. Of course, it was bound to happen since he predicted it after it actually happened. Now, the last of the great sphinxes belongs to Khafre's son, and his name was Menkaure. So here is his pyramid. I showed you a picture of him a little bit earlier, the smallest of the pyramids in the background. Now, taken together, we can perceive there were interrelationships between or among these three pyramids. And this is very important because it's not just the Great Pyramid, but everything worked together with these three. And you can see from this red diagonal line that it picks up the southeast corners of each one of them, and it is absolutely perfect. I know that's usually the point at which, you know, the people who believe in the ancient astronauts say, well, how else could it have occurred if it weren't for ancient astronauts? Well, let me just say that I mentioned that there were 140 pyramids. I'm not going to show you all of them, but I thought I would show you a few of them to explain what actually happens. These were by no means the last of the pyramids, the royal pyramids of Egypt, but the grand heights, the scale, the effect, and the statement that they made really had no followers that equaled them. But let me show you just a few. Here you see Unis's pyramid of the 5th dynasty. And it's not the outside that's important on this one, but what's on the inside. The first time that we actually have pyramid texts. These are spells that the king will use to get into the afterlife, or at least to ensure his getting into the afterlife. One of his followers in the 6th dynasty, Teti, and you'll notice in this particular image, you can see the step pyramid over in the background, and this just looks like a pile of sand. I have to tell you it isn't. And here are the tombs that we actually work in right in this area, so our expedition to Saqqara. Now, if we move into the Middle Kingdom, as I said, I'm just going to show you a few. You can see that the The core of the pyramids is no longer made up of these huge blocks, these millions of blocks. They're using outcrops of stone and then rubble as filler. And here, this is Amenemhat I, the first ruler of the 12th dynasty. And this is at Lisht. And here you see Senwosret II, his pyramid at Lahun, and you can clearly see the base, the core of this pyramid is not blocks. Now, in the second intermediate period, there's virtually nothing left, and this is the last major pyramid that was built in Egypt for royal burial. And the man's name is Kenjer, and this is again at Saqqara, like Unas and Teti. When we go into the New Kingdom, there are virtually no royal pyramids. This is one of the few, and there's this one is at Abydos, and also done by a Penn archaeologist, a former student, whose name is Stephen Harvey. And he's now proved that the kind of construction that you see here was built, and he's still actually now not even sure that it was a ritual one or not. But I don't have the last word about that. Now, one of the things I also wanted to say to you is that I wanted to ask a question that you might have is, why did they continue to build these things when they all were robbed? Because, in fact, all of the pyramids were robbed. And when you think about it, these monuments had, in essence, were basically a great big sign, maybe even neon, that said, "This way to the gold." And all of these pyramids were robbed. To foil the plunderers, they developed different protection systems. In the Great Pyramid, they had portcullis stones that just slid into place. And if you want to know how that actually worked, then there is a movie called Land of the Pharaohs, and they actually show you in that movie how it works, and it's the only thing in the entire movie that I think is accurate. So what were the other ways? Well, the one that I'm going to show you now, and just for a few minutes, is they went into the concept of symbolic pyramids. And they constructed burials within high hills, raised cliffs, and in mountains. And all of these were in the south, which is where all of these kinds of, this kind of terrain would actually occur. So, in chronological order, I show you from the first intermediate period. Here is Ankhtifi's monument, and this is along with several others, other people from this time period. He wasn't quite a royal, and if he is in the afterlife, he's probably very happy that I put him in this list with other royal figures.